when companies try to move from manual relationship driven operations, which are very common in CPG many times, to digital system driven ways of working? What are some of the biggest frictions there?
The biggest frictions have nothing to do with the technology. They are almost always behavioral, structural, and somewhere cultural as well. The bigger organizations, they are like elephants, and it needs some effort to move those elephants. Legacy mindsets always collide with the digital ways of working, who have operated for years based on their relationships, based on their judgment, or based on just a phone call. They often resist these structured workflows and system governance. So always take the baby steps, go step by step, doing small POC and then implementing, seeing the real business values coming or not, and then eventually scaling it up to your further organization.
So as AI becomes more embedded in FMCG or CPG operations, how do you approach governance in terms of when should AI be allowed to act autonomously versus when it should only recommend and wait for human approval?
AI governance, especially in the CPG context, it's not about choosing full automation or choosing full human control. It's about setting the right guardrails based on the risk, based on the data confidence, or based on the overall business impact. And the ones who get it right treat AI like any other strategic capability, govern it, measure it well, and scale responsibly are going to succeed.
Hi, welcome to the BeatRoute Podcast, where we explore digital transformation, AI, and how technology is reshaping operations across retail and distribution-led industries. Joining me is Pallavi Nigam, Digital and Projects Head for Supply Chain at Mondelēz International. Pallavi has a rare perspective. She's seen transformation from both sides, years on the vendor side at Zycus and GEP, then leading from within Unilever and Mondelēz, managing large teams, implementing SAP, AI systems, and digital solutions at a global scale. She is also an author on change management, a doctoral researcher on AI in supply chain, and recognized as an AI leader and woman leader in procurement. Pallavi, it's great to have you here.
Thank you so much, Nikhil. And finally, we are here, and it's an honor, for me to be with you here, sharing my perspectives. So over to
Likewise.
you now. Let's shoot out your
So,
query.
Pallavi, let's start with your background and journey. You have spent over 2 decades driving transformation across CPG and manufacturing industries. You have implemented enterprise systems. You have led change programs, and now you're deploying AI solutions. What I wanted to understand is what first drew you to this digital transformation work, and what keeps you fascinated as we enter the AI era?
Okay, so what drew me to the digital transformation was the fact that I did not, started my career in technology at all. I began somewhere in core business operations, with ITW and with L&T of the world, where I was more focused on marketing, business development, and project operations. And those roles kind of expose me to the realities of how processes, how people, data, and operations come together, and where do they often break. And, I saw firsthand how manual planning, how fragmented processes and lack of reliable data could slow down your overall, even the best teams of the world. And that's what pulled me into SAP and enterprise systems very early on to my career. Actually led a lot of large S4 HANA and other allied implementations programs. Even I led data governance solutions, and then further source to pay transformations. So those years somewhere, taught me in terms of how technology can standardize, can stabilize, and even scale your complex global operation. So from there, when I moved to the other side of the table, the SaaS product world, there I started implementing and leading multi-region transformation for global enterprises, which is where I started embedding AI-led sourcing and cognitive procurement solutions. So this shaped my product mindset and reinforced a very key belief in me that transformation is not about automating the old work or
Hmm.
old world. Rather,
Yeah.
it's about reimagining how we can design the entire new piece. And of course, I leveraged that into my new chapters when I entered into CPG with Unilever and Mondelēz. That somewhere allowed me to apply that philosophy at a true global scale. So at Unilever, I actually architected our global product solutions leveraging S4HANA or Pega or BTP, a lot of new technologies, right? And it was implemented across 80 plus markets, across the globe. Wherein I at Mondelez, I'm now leading a lot of enterprise-wide digital and AI roadmap, wherein integrating a lot of global technologies and then also building a lot of control towers, integrating my data governance models, right? So that is where I felt that these are not somewhere technology projects, they are actually the business transformation programs or the business transformation engines, you can say. So, in this entire journey, what keeps me fascinated as we enter into the AI era is, I would say these are finally, the technology transformation is finally moving beyond digitalization with intelligence driven enterprises. So, for the first time in 20 years of my career, I'm seeing that technology is not just supporting decisions, it is also predicting and optimizing them. And because I've seen the entire journey, right from business operations to SAP transformations to SaaS product innovation and then global AI led supply chain redesign, I can appreciate how this entire seismic shift is happening. And this shift is actually fascinating me because AI is somewhere shifting, us from process compliance to intelligence. Earlier, we used to design systems to enforce workflows, while today, AI models are recommending the best load plan, the best route, or the best production sequence, or even the best credit decision, I would say. So that is somewhere bringing that intelligence into our processes. Then further, the second aspect will be AI is bringing a lot of predictability into the traditionally unpredictable operations. Earlier, I have seen that the predictive insights, the one that I'm building right now into our all logistics operations, wherein it is able to predict those lane delays which are happening, or the overall career performance which is going to happen, or if my stock is at risk. So fundamentally, this is changing how the logistics team operates traditionally. And this shift from hindsight to foresight is something which is really amazing me, right? And the third thing will be AI is actually creating a new partnership between the humans and the machines. So AI is not something just artificial intelligence. I would say AI is more human intelligence, right? So AI, artificial intelligence, when it meets with the human intelligence, is when the business transformation happens. And leaders, I see that now they spend quite less time on transactions and more on, that exception management or strategy or building the resilience or even, bringing that customer delight. So that is my perspective, and that is something I see that as we are moving towards Industry 5.0, this convergence of AI to IoT or automation and human centric design is where the future actually truly lies.
Tell me something, Pallavi. See, there's so much to do, right? As a technologist, anyone would get excited. Like, okay, I can do something on production side, I can do something on the logistics side, I can do something maybe on the distribution side, right? How do you pick where to focus on, what to prioritize? Because AI has the potential of impacting all facets of business. How do you prioritize things?
So, uh, if I understood your question correctly, you're asking me where should we start picking the AI?
Yeah, how should we decide where to start?
How should we decide where to start? Okay.
Yeah.
See, a lot of, I would say, the transformations which are happening, or traditionally the kind of transformations which were happening, those were very oriented towards digital technology. We kind of implemented a lot of digital solutions. We take the awards and then we run away. I mean, the whole project team will somewhere go into implementing the new set of technologies, and then the new operations team will be coming in and they will be forgetting about the technology because somewhere they'll be blaming that technology is something, or the tool which has been developed is not actually helping them, and they will move to their usual ways of working, wherein they would start working over the WhatsApp or or the Excels of the world. So that is where was the failure that I started seeking during my transformations, and which has actually pushed me to pick some of the AI tools which can actually bring the adoption part of it. And
Yeah.
the other aspect which I see is the predictability that AI is bringing, which I was also touching earlier. The earlier digital tools were kind of bringing that automation wherein you are shifting from the Excel ways of working to maybe uploading to your digital tools and getting the whole algorithm done over your tools. But now the predictive aspect of AI, which is kind of predicting your stock levels or predicting your, the risk which are upcoming. That is
Hmm.
where you have to start figuring out the use cases. Where do you exactly are the risk which is happening currently? And those are the exact places from where you can start picking the AI solutions, because AI is actually going to transform the predictability aspect of
Yeah.
all sets of, not only into sales or marketing or supply chain or anything. It's actually going to transform all the entire domain.
Thanks, Pallavi. We earlier touched upon how you have perspective from both the sides, vendor side as well as client side. So, based on your work on both the sides, I wanted to hear from you what are some realities that vendors often miss considering when they are pitching AI solutions to organizations like Mondelez?
That's an interesting question, actually. And me having worked on both sides, first with SaaS providers, like I would not call out the names basically, the Zycus and GEP. And now
Yeah.
on the enterprise side with, let's say, the CPG companies, I've seen a consistent gap in how AI solutions are actually pitched
Yeah.
versus how they are actually adopted. So vendors often, underestimate the realities of operating a global retail, or they do not understand the FMCG organization, the way it operates. And because of that, even that great AI tools are struggling to land in CPG space. A lot of
Yeah.
vendors coming to us, showcasing a lot of demos, but somewhere we feel that a lot of technology is not actually helping us. And
Mm.
here are the realities actually, which many of the vendors are frequently missing. So AI, they have to understand that AI cannot succeed without solving the data fidelity. And
Mhm.
most of the organizations are today struggling on the data side. Vendors love showcasing sophisticated models, but in retail and in CPG, data fragmentation is something which is
Yeah.
crucial, because
Yeah.
it's a old known concept, right? Garbage in
Yeah.
and garbage out.
Yeah.
And this led to most of the time inconsistent processes, which is actually the biggest blocker. And during my time working with the CPGs companies, I've seen myself that we were not able to deploy a lot of digital tools just because my data was not very clean, or even I implemented the technology, it was not adopted. So that is something which we need to keep in mind. The other aspect will be AI must fit into your overall operating model, not the other
Hmm.
way around. So
Yeah.
many vendors assume that clients will redesign the workflows around the tool, right? But
Hmm.
in companies, especially the CPG companies, the operating model, the same operating model spans around more than 40 plus markets globally. And
Hmm.
those legacy systems, those people capabilities, and the regulatory constraints, that is, that spans across vertical markets. And if the solution that you are bringing can't embed into the legacy systems, let's say SAPs of the world, or let's say the TMS of the world, or
Yeah.
any other governance layers, it will somehow die despite being a brilliant tool. Right. Somehow, I also feel AI impact is limited unless you see that frontline adoption is frictionless. So,
Hmm.
I've seen that a lot of times while I was working with the SaaS world, we used to demonstrate world class tools, but it was somewhere struggling simply because users found them not very, intuitive, and it was somewhere disruptive to their daily work. And I've seen it
Yeah.
myself while I was
Hmm.
the other side of the table. So on the client side, I've seen that somewhere when it comes to demand planning, let's say the demand planners will straightway reject an AI forecast if the system is something can't explain why it deviates from the historical
Yeah.
patterns.
Yeah.
And retail teams don't need more dashboards, to be honest. They need explainable and actionable insights. So that is where this needs to be considered while pitching any other solution to the CPG world. The other thing that they need to also keep in mind that CPG organizations operate under extreme time to value pressure. While in SaaS companies, we talk about 12 to 18 months horizons, in CPG pressure is is actually real. The real stock outs, the customer fill rate, or the the routing failures impact revenue not only today but even the next year, right? So
Yeah.
that is where we kind of push a lot of vendors to deliver modular and fast to deploy incremental value solutions, and not just monolithic, which is going to happen multi-year transformation. Yeah, and I also feel that AI must not just demonstrate business value. It should not really bring that algorithmic novelty. It should somewhere demonstrate that business value. Yeah.
That makes sense, Pallavi. Thanks. Now, I want to talk about change management with you because it's been a focus topic for you on your LinkedIn. You have written many things about it. And in fact, you have literally written a book on this, The Cost of Ignoring Change Management in Digital Transformations. So, what are the biggest execution frictions you see when companies try to move from manual relationship driven operations, which are very common in CPG many times, to digital system driven ways of working? What are some of the biggest frictions there?
See, I actually forgot that I wrote a book on change management. It's only once in a while when I see my account getting credited with some amount just because my books are doing good. So I remember that I've written a book. So see, change management is the biggest issue across all the digital transformation, and every digital transformation leader must be knowing about it. So when companies, they move from manual or relationship driven operations to the digital or system driven ways of working, the biggest frictions have nothing to do with the technology. They are almost always behavioral, structural, and somewhere cultural as well. A few patterns that I have seen consistently across my transformations is where legacy mindsets always collide with the digital ways of working, right? Who have operated for years based on their relationships, based on their judgment, or based on just a phone call. They often resist these structured workflows and system governance. So, in my experience, I've seen that the system was quite ready during my implementations, but due to the mindset shift, planners and sales team often preferred their Excel and their comfort level working with Excels. The gap between policy and the on ground reality is also something which need to be factored in, wherein digital systems enforce a lot of standardization. Markets operates with lot of years of local exceptions, and the
Yes.
transition actually becomes really difficult when people realize that digital isn't replicating the old world. It is actually going to redefine it, right? So this is where friction starts showing up. And just one thing that we have to consider is, why can't the system allow what we used to do earlier? That is the only mindset that a user is having while any implementation is ongoing. So that is something which we need to actually take care of. The third aspect I would say is maybe underestimating the effort required in the data discipline. I know I've touched it earlier, but manual operations somewhere, can survive with inconsistent master data. Digital operations cannot. So, the biggest bottleneck that I have seen across any implementations was aligning your master data, aligning your product or customer hierarchies, aligning those various SKUs that you have, and the overall process definitions. So digital, demands a lot of data hygiene, and many organizations realize this too late, generally once the implementation is completed. And by the time implementation is completed, the adoption level starts kicking. That is where they realize that their data is not really accurate, and all these discrepancies start creeping in at that point of time. Then the other aspect it also need to be that fear of transparency and performance visibility somewhere, because manual work creates a lot of opacity, to be honest.
Yes.
Digital brings that transparency, right? So all those dashboards, all those audit trails or SLA trackers, or those exception alerts, that makes performance visible in real time, and this creates somewhere traditionally the people who are working into manual ways of working, there is some anxiety level somewhere for employees, and that often subconsciously resistance creates that resistance to the new systems.
So,
And then of course, the one most important point during any digital implementation is never forget that change management is not just communication, it is capability building. So yeah.
okay. So Your point about users, right? Them being willing to adopt, them being willing to use your system, right? So, what variable, in your opinion, matters the most for adoption? Is it incentivizing the users? Is it building good UI UX? Or is it just top down pressure from the leadership? Or anything else that you think is most important variable?
See, the most important variable, there is just not one variable which will be factored in. The most important will be, of course, leadership buy-in should be there, and there has to be some kind of enforcement coming towards the starting phase of any implementation. And that is precisely because everybody, the entire team has to come on boarded, and they generally look their leaders to see that whether leaders are accepting this change or not. If the leader has accepted, then somewhere it comes to their mind that okay, they also have to go through that, right? So that is the most important factor. But apart from that, the other factors that I touched upon, the real change is where, apart from the leadership buy-in, the leadership enforcement, the other aspect is also to go very slow with implementations. It's not always agile ways of working that
Yeah.
works, because it the bigger organizations, right, they are like elephants, and it takes some effort to move those elephants, right? So always go take the baby steps, go step by step, doing small POC and then implementing, seeing the real business values coming or not, and then eventually, scaling it up to your further organization.
Thanks, Pallavi. So you would have succeeded in many transformation projects at different organizations, and many times I imagine the results might not have been as good as you expected, right? So looking back, what would have gone wrong in subpar outcomes, right? Would it have been the technology itself, the process design, or people and culture?
I would say it's not only technology design. Technology is never wrong, I would say, because technology is something apart from the data part of it. We always, create very good systems systematically. But somewhere that culture always plays a bigger role, and the people part of it. So if you have managed your people well, then there cannot be no coming in from the users. So it's always has to be your system design has to, I mean, your users has to get onboarded right from the first day of your digital journey, so that they get onboarded, they get a comfort level with the systems, and then eventually when you are going and scaling those implementations, then they are already onboarded, they have seen that journey, and they do understand the overall system design. And at that point of time, it can never come as a failure for any technology. And I've done it multiple times into my thing. Having said that, I also know that the bigger implementations to the likes of S4 HANA transformations,
Yeah.
or any other, planning tools, if we have to implement those kind of technology, then somewhere we have to create that entire change management plan, because it is not really easy to onboard each and every user during the implementation phase, right? So that is where a lot of training, lot of change management communications does plays a role. But having said that, to answer your question, I think the technology, the systemic design, along with the user onboarding is something which is very crucial. And the change management aspect of it is definitely plays a bigger role in terms of any technology failure or implementations.
That makes sense. We have observed when we speak to many legacy CPG enterprises that they would have digitized years ago. But as their processes evolve, their teams start doing many things through Excel sheets and WhatsApp instead of using the tool that they would have deployed. So when choosing new systems, how do you make sure that you are picking solutions that won't end up misaligned with your future processes as your business evolves? And then your team will need to find manual processes to overcome the gaps.
Okay, very interesting question actually. I never thought from that angle, but the only way to avoid systems getting misaligned over time is to design them, around future operating models, not about today's workarounds. Most of the time, we only take care of the today's workarounds and forget about how the future is going to be reshaped, right? So many legacy enterprises digitized a decade ago, but because team shifted to Excel, to WhatsApp, and the local shortcuts, the system became irrelevant today, right? I've seen that in order to prevent this, we need to be doing two or three things. Always anchor your technology to the global process standards, not to how a single market operate, but to always harmonizing it to the process standards, and that should be global.
Yeah.
Right? Second aspect will be to choose the platform that are configurable and of course the scalable, like SAPs or Oracles of the world. And then they also evolve as the business is evolving, right? Because we every now and then we see that SAP has come up with something new technology, that is they have been merging AI, and they have been reshaping the entire, their operations, their digital business, which is where we always need to choose the vendor very wisely and choose the platform that is going to be configurable and scalable. The third aspect will be to continuously, govern ways of working, so that exceptions don't really, silently become the new process. When you redesign for where the business is going, not where it is today, your systems stay aligned and, it's somewhere it stays relevant and future proof.
Thanks, Pallavi. That makes sense. So now this thing that systems might misalign with the time, this becomes even amplified in the AI era, where there's this real risk because of how transformational AI is, and also because of how fast AI itself is evolving. There's a real risk that AI might make many of the existing systems redundant or outdated at any time in the next few years. So, in that kind of scenario, how should enterprises plan their transformation if they are starting now or if they are in the early stages?
Okay. In my view, the biggest mistake early stage organizations, make is trying to future proof by buying the complex AI tools, and that too very early in their journey.
Yeah.
The real way is to avoid that redundancy, right? And is to invest in the foundations that don't expire. For example, your data quality, your process standards, or your modular platform, and a clear operating model, of course. And in order to stay future ready, you always need to choose the technology or the platform that evolve with AI. For example, I was bringing in the example of SAP, right? And it should be cloud native, and it should able to continuously embed the new AI capabilities without even replacing the core. So your core has always to be clean, and on top of that layer you can keep on building any new AI capabilities which are coming in. On top of that, designing those flexible architecture. For example, in digital roadmap journey, we intentionally use a lot of modular layers like data lakes, like AI services, or those workflow engines, so that new AI models can plug in very seamlessly with that particular architecture. Your foundation has to be really strong. Prioritizing the use cases over your tools. So when we deploy any AI technology or any predictive, let's say, control tower, we focus on first building the business value and not exactly the algorithm. So any AI tool, whatever you are building, has to bring in that value delivery for the business. So if the foundations are right, AI doesn't make systems obsolete.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
It's going to augment them. And the real redundancy risk comes from rushing into AI without even solving for your systemic, concerns like data processes and governance.
That makes sense. Another thing, to continue this and get into making these transformations take and making them be really valuable for the business. So, how do you balance the pressure of meeting short term goals or short term priorities of the business with the need to build more modern digital first operations in the long term? So, how do you balance these two things, short term versus long term? Do you have to make any trade offs in any of the cases?
Not really. So AI is delivering that tangible, measurable value in areas where the problem statements are quite clear. The data foundation is strong and the decisions are repetitive. So in my experience, the most impactful uses are somewhere the predictive supply planning, or the touchless operations, or the logistics and fulfillment predictions, right? So these are more mature, more ROI positive use cases because they augment your decisions and they already have a very structured processes and high quality data. So where AI is still experimental or overhyped is in areas requiring deep context or where high variability plays, like fully autonomous planning or end-to-end chatbot. Let's say if you are building that chatbot is going to replace a lot of human judgment, and you must have seen several examples while you must have been interacting with any chatbots of Zomtos of the world or Blinkits of the world, right? We have seen the unstructured problem solving in markets with a lot of fragmented data. So these models often look great in demos, but struggle in the real operational environment. So the simple mantra I would say is uh, AI creates real value where the enterprise is ready, and it somewhere becomes hype where the data process maturity or the operating model is not really ready. Right? So that's my perspective on that.
So, Pallavi, in your experience working with customers like Heineken, Roche, DuPont, and so on, separates the organizations which successfully transform from those which struggle? Even when they might have similar kind of budgets, they might have similar kind of caliber of people. So, what separates organizations which successfully transform versus which struggle?
See, from what I have seen, the biggest difference between organizations that truly transform and those that struggle is not the technology. It's the discipline of the execution, to be honest, right? For me, clients like Hennikens of the world or DuPonts of the world, and during my journey with the SaaS-based, service providers, the successful ones had two or three things in common, to be honest. But there was a clear ownership, right? They treated digital as a business program, not an IT project, right? So I was saying there are two or three factors which I have seen that these successful companies have, adopted. And the first one will be the clear ownership, because I see that they always treat any implementation not as an IT project, but rather as a business transformation program.
Yes.
Right? I've seen that they have a very clear strategy on who is the global process owner, who is going to drive those S2P transformations or any other technology which we are implementing, or who is actually going to make the entire adoption part far smoother. So they have clear process owners across the implementation journey. The second aspect will be the relentless governance that they have. So while I was working with Henneken, I've seen that strong design authorities and the data councils, right? So markets could not always dilute the global template, which is why their AI-led sourcing deployment scaled really well. The third will be the change leadership, and I will never go away with any kind of change management, because that is the crux of all the digital implementations. Your technology can never succeed if you don't really have a very clear strategy on the change communication, right? So any capability building you do, any digital intervention you implement, unless and until you redesign your entire role for the people that were built into the rollout, so that people shift their behaviors and not just their tools. On the other hand, the organizations that struggled, I've seen multiple organizations that were equally struggling, right? Including some markets at very global companies. That is where I've seen that the issues were quite consistent. Too much of local customization, that is the clear no, right? And then the weaker data foundations, and leaders who wanted the benefits of transformation without even committing to the behavioral changes. So the markets that adopt AI driven, technologies, in my aspect, they should clearly call out the leaders champion the new ways of working. Data foundations have to be really strong, and the teams are measured on the digital KPIs, not on the old processes. So they don't just, any successful organization, they don't just invest in technology, they always invest in the operating model that lets the technology work.
That's a good mantra. Thanks, Pallavi. So, one question that I wanted to ask you was, because you have managed national level rollouts as well as global level rollouts across India, EMEA, APAC, ANZ. So, how is rolling out transformation in one territory, maybe that's India or any other single territory, different from managing multi region or global rollouts? What changes in how you approach that?
Okay, so see, rolling out any transformation in one territory is about depth, and rolling it across regions is more about, I should say, orchestration. In India, for example, when I led any SAP implementations or any other deployments, I could go very deep into the local processes, the ecosystems, and the on ground behaviors of the users. Decisions were quite faster because stakeholders were closer to the process and the
Mm.
context was quite uniform. But in multi-region or the global programs, I mean, the one that I've done, I've led across 40 plus markets. So while I was at Unilever, I've seen that the challenge shifts to the harmonization part of any technology,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
every region will have their own maturity levels, they will have their own nuances, and they will have their own regulations, legacy systems, and their unique ways of working. So the approach changes from customization to maybe standardization while we are into global rollouts, aligning with the various either EMEA, APAC, or ANZ regions. And then India is one global template, because India is always very ahead on in terms of technology. I would say we are very local, but when it comes to adoption of technology, we are actually operate in a manner that global operates. And then from hands-on delivery to the governance, so setting
Yeah.
those global authorities, those change playbooks and the data standards is second aspect that should always change. And then from speed to sequencing, so rolling out markets in waves. The earlier I was telling you that it has always been the requirement is to always scale it up very slowly. Do not go and implement in a big bang manner, rather go in a very wavy manner based on the readiness, volume, and the risk appetite, and the appetite for a real change from a particular region. So, yeah, single country rollout succeed with intimacy, global rollout succeed with alignment, I would say.
That's a nice takeaway. Thanks, Pallavi. So you touched upon governance very fleetingly in one of the earlier questions. I have very specific question on governance that I need you to answer. So as AI becomes more embedded in FMCG or CPG operations, how do you approach governance in terms of when should AI be allowed to act autonomously versus when it should only recommend and wait for human approval? Is that something that organizations are already thinking about?
It is actually, so AI governance, especially in the CPG context, it's not about choosing the full automation or choosing the full human control. It's about somewhere setting the right guardrails, based on the risk, based on the data confidence, or based on the overall business impact. So most
Hmm.
leading organizations are actually, already thinking about this very actively these days. And in my
Yeah.
experience, using a very tiered governance model, low risk, high volume decisions always scale it up to the full automation. And I've seen it myself in my journey, wherein we were implementing, if the rules are clear, if the data is strong, and the financial risk is very well within the tolerance limit, then automation can save through thousands of manual hours and delivered very good value in your business, right? The medium risk decisions will be somewhere, AI recommends and humans approve, right? So
Hmm.
that will be very medium risk, I would say, because AI can flag a lot of risk, right?
Yeah.
But your supply or your particular user teams decide the final action, and which is where I was saying that AI can never succeed unless it is having the human intelligence in action. So that is where you can maybe take around medium risk decisions based on some risk appetite or risk being highlighted by your models,
Yeah.
and then the final decision or the action point coming in from the humans.
Right.
High risk, I would say, or highly contextual decisions, that will be human led and AI supported again. So,
Yeah.
what matters is that AI earns autonomy, right? Through proven accuracy, of course, not hype.
Yeah.
And the more consistent the model, the more decisions shift from AI assisted to the AI led. So,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
organizations are absolutely thinking about this. And the ones who get it right treat AI like any other strategic capability, govern it, measure it well, and then scale responsibly is are going to succeed.
That makes sense. So Pallavi, finally, for retail leaders, enterprise retail leaders who are accelerating their digital transformation journeys today, what advice would you offer them to help them build organizations which are ready for today's realities as well as tomorrow's opportunities?
Okay. So my advice to retail, leaders is simple. You need to build your systems for resilience today, right? And
Okay.
you need to redesign your technology in a way that it should imbibe the intelligence for tomorrow. So don't just chase the shiny tools which are coming in plethora these days. Build the foundations correct, and that let AI and automation scale very naturally in your systems. And from my experience across multiple organizations that I work, I would stress on both. Fix your fundamentals first. The data quality, the standard processes, and the clear ownership that I was talking about are what the most advanced capabilities that you need to set in correct. And then the second aspect will be start with high impact and low complexity use cases, right? So, for example, let's say maybe take up any AI driven credit scoring and predictive invoicing. So, it is very easy to bring that delivered, very quick and measurable value. But enterprise wide confidence in AI is going to come very slowly, and that is why you need to start with very low complex use cases. Then the third aspect will be design an operating model and not just a tech stack, because these days a lot of companies are actually coming up, they do bring a lot of new technologies, and organizations are kind of rushing to get all the tech stacks into their somewhere architecture, fit it somehow, so that they think that the more technologies we implement, the more successful their digital roadmap will be. However, it's not. So organizations win when digital becomes part of their everyday behaviors, right? Whether it is the real differentiator about any digital implementation is the change leadership and the capability building, and not just the algorithm. So if leaders can get these three or four things right, their organizations become future ready by not just by design, but be able to maybe absorb the new technologies, maybe pivot with the market. And of course, that is something which is going to unlock a lot of value to your organizations, and that will eventually showcase how fast the landscape evolves.
Wow, that was a really nice takeaway, Pallavi. And this has been such an incredible session for me, very insightful. And I believe that our audience will also find it equally insightful. Thanks for giving your time. I know we ran over our uh, time limit much earlier. So thanks for giving us so much of your time and your insights. It was a pleasure talking to you, Pallavi.
Thank you so much, Nikhil. And it was really a very good session, because I worked across multiple organizations and I've myself forget a lot of concepts. So it was a very good session wherein a lot of new things, new insights came to my, whole journey. And I'm definitely going to leverage these again into my journey. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
having me,
Pallavi.
and all the best to you.